At exactly 11:58 p.m., the front lobby of Whitmore Tower fell quiet. The lawyers were gone. The boardroom lights were off. Only the hum of vending machines and the faint hiss of AC remained. And the janitor arrived, right on time. Isaiah Thompson, age 72. Skin like old mahogany. Posture slightly bent. Hands gnarled from years of mops and chemical burns. He pushed his faded gray cart down the marble hallway with the same rhythm he had for 19 years. No one said hello. No one noticed the way he lined up every trash bin perfectly, or how he never once left a floor streaked. They just knew. The place is clean in the morning. That's all. But Isaiah was more than a janitor. Tucked beneath his shirt, on a thin chain that rubbed gently against his chest each time he bent to scrub, hung a medal. Bronze Star. Vietnam. 1969. He didn't wear it for others to see. He wore it to remind himself. They tried to kill me in one country and ignore me in another, but I survived both. Outside, the city buzzed in its usual rhythm of unrest. But inside the tower, Isaiah kept working. Floor by floor, light by light, until he reached the executive suite. That was where it happened. The first sound, the elevator ding. The second, heavy boots. The third, the voice. Hey, you. What the hell are you doing up here? Isaiah turned slowly. Two uniformed officers stood at the far end of the hall. White. Young. One with his hand on his holster. Isaiah held up his ID badge calmly. I work here, son. The taller cop walked closer. You break in through the loading dock? Isaiah frowned. I've been here almost 20 years. Don't get smart. The shorter one laughed. Damn, old man. This your retirement gig? Isaiah didn't answer. Something in their tone. The cold amusement. It was familiar. From a time long ago. Different war, same stares. We got a call about a prowler, the first officer said. Yeah? From who? No answer. Just a shove. Hard. Sudden. Isaiah stumbled back against the wall, broom clattering. You think you can talk back? A baton flashed. It hit his side, then his knee. The taller cop chuckled as Isaiah crumpled. What you hiding, huh? Stolen laptops? Keys. You looting this place? Another blow. To the ribs. Isaiah gasped, and as his shirt shifted, the metal slipped into view. The baton froze midair. The laughing stopped. Both officers stared, not at Isaiah's face, but at the glint of bronze against his chest. Is that? Isaiah's voice, hoarse but steady, rose from the floor. I wore that in Khe Sanh. You boys ever heard of Khe Sanh? They didn't answer. He sat up slowly, despite the pain. I've seen death in the jungle. Buried brothers who looked like me. Came home in '69 and got spit on by your granddaddies. He looked up at them, eyes clear, proud. And now you're gonna beat a veteran in the building he's cleaned for 2 decades? Silence. The taller cop lowered his baton. The other looked away. Isaiah exhaled slowly. The war wasn't over. But this battle? He'd won it with truth. And a piece of metal they weren't expecting. By 7:05 a.m., the security team at Whitmore Tower had already reviewed the footage. And by 7:45, Grant Whitmore's phone rang. He didn't answer at first. Not because he was avoiding responsibility. He simply didn't answer calls that early unless they came from the governor, the board, or his mother. But this one kept ringing. So he picked up. Sir, you need to see something. Grant arrived at the tower in a crisp navy suit, hair still damp from a shower, espresso in hand. The air inside the marble lobby smelled like leather and polished power, just the way he liked it. But today, there was something else hanging in the air, discomfort. He was greeted by Reese, his head of security, usually unshakable. But now, his expression was tight. Follow me. In the surveillance room, 3 screens were paused on a frame that made Grant's stomach drop. Isaiah Thompson. On the floor. 2 uniformed officers. One raising a baton. One grinning. And then, just visible, something around Isaiah's neck catching the light. Reese unpaused the video. Grant watched in silence. Watched the hit. The fall. The laugh. The moment the metal was seen. The change in posture. The fear. The guilt. The realization. Reese leaned against the wall. We pulled entry logs. No one called those cops from inside the building. Grant narrowed his eyes. Then who the hell did? By noon, the footage had been leaked. No one knew who sent it. But it landed in the inboxes of 5 journalists, 3 city council members, and the inbox of Senator Clarendon, whose office had once referred to janitorial workers as invisible labor. The subject line on the anonymous email read, "Is this what respect looks like in America?" The video spread like gasoline on dry grass. By 3 p.m., it was trending. Hashtag Isaiah Thompson. Hashtag Janitor Justice. Hashtag Not Invisible. TV pundits debated. Activists rallied. Twitter caught fire. At 4:12 p.m., Grant walked into the hospital room. Isaiah lay in a stiff white bed, ribs wrapped, for dripping. The room smelled like antiseptic and something heavier, truth. Isaiah looked up. "Mr. Whitmore." His voice was thin, but there was steel in it. Grant cleared his throat. "I came as soon as I saw the footage." "Did you?" "I'm sorry, Isaiah." A long silence. Then, "You ain't the one who hit me. But you built the kind of world where folks like me don't surprise anyone when we're bleeding." Grant didn't respond right away. "I'd like to help. With medical bills. Legal support. Security." Isaiah studied him. "Then do it right." "Meaning, don't just cover my pain. Cover the system that made it easy to ignore." Grant nodded slowly. "Then I need you with me." "What for?" "Because you carry something people will listen to." Isaiah chuckled dryly. "Took a baton for y'all to hear me." Outside the room, reporters swarmed the hospital's entrance. Grant stepped to the podium alone. "What happened to Mr. Isaiah Thompson is more than unacceptable. It's a mirror, and I don't like what we see in it. He wasn't attacked because he did anything wrong. He was attacked because in this country, a black man with keys and a mop still looks like a threat." Flashbulbs fired. He continued, "And for every Isaiah caught on camera, there are thousands who never are. So today, my company is launching a $10 million fund for janitorial workers' legal protection, health coverage, and whistleblower rights. But that's just money. The real change will come when men like me stop pretending we didn't build the silence." Back in his room, Isaiah watched the statement on TV. He didn't smile, didn't cry, just nodded once. Because this wasn't about charity. It was about a reckoning. And reckoning had finally come knocking. Within 48 hours of the video going viral, Isaiah's name was everywhere. Local news. Elderly janitor brutalized by police. Whitmore Tower CEO responds with $10 million fund. Cable pundits. Was it racism or a misunderstanding? Black Twitter. His name is Isaiah Thompson. Vietnam vet. Bronze Star. Y'all should have known better. But the fire didn't stop at outrage. Something more powerful began to spark. Reclamation. People wanted to know who Isaiah really was. Not the beaten man. Not the janitor. The whole man. A journalist from The Atlantic was the first to find it. A blurry photo. Yellowed newspaper. Dated 1970. Local hero honored for valor in Vietnam. There he was, Isaiah, 20-something, standing at attention in full dress uniform, a bronze star pinned to his chest. Next to him, his mother, holding his hand. The article quoted the citation. For acts of heroism and meritorious service during the Battle of Khe Sanh. They'd called him Private First Class Isaiah J. Thompson. But the country hadn't remembered that name. Until now. The next day, ABC requested an interview. Isaiah declined. He wasn't interested in performing pain. "I already bled for this country once," he told the nurse. "I don't need to explain the scar." But he did agree to meet with a local high school history class. They gathered in a rec center near the hospital. 30 students. Mostly black and brown. Isaiah walked in slowly, leaning on a cane, ribs still tight. No cameras. Just kids. And he told them stories. Not about the attack. About the war. "They taught us to fight in boots, but they never taught this country how to walk beside us once we came home. We got medals, but not mortgages. Flags, but not jobs." One student raised his hand. "Do you regret serving?" Isaiah smiled, faint but firm. "I regret that I came home to silence." Meanwhile, Grant's office exploded with both praise and backlash. Some donors were furious. One emailed, "You're politicizing tragedy. Stay in your lane." Grant replied only with, "Maybe your lane's been too quiet for too long." But internally, Grant was wrestling with something deeper. He'd never asked where Isaiah lived. Never visited the janitor's wing. Never learned the name of the man whose hands polished his floors. Now that man had become the face of a national conversation, and Grant wasn't sure if he deserved to stand beside him. Later that week, Grant visited Isaiah again, this time with a folder in hand. "I had my team dig through records. You were owed a full military pension. You never received it." Isaiah raised an eyebrow. "That's supposed to impress me?" "No," Grant said. "It's supposed to embarrass me." He placed the folder on the bedside table. We filed the paperwork already. Retroactively. With interest. Isaiah didn't touch the file. Just stared at him. Why now? Because I stopped being afraid of the answer to why not before. A long pause. Then Isaiah chuckled. You sure you ain't running for office? Grant shook his head. Just trying to clean my side of the street. The public didn't just remember Isaiah. They rallied. Protests turned into panels. Petitions turned into policy drafts. City Hall passed a motion requiring all police units to complete anti-bias training, led by community members, not consultants. And at the center of every press conference, every town hall, every newscast, was the photo, that still frame of Isaiah, crumpled on the floor, the bronze star gleaming from his chest. A reminder of what this country chooses to honor and what it chooses to ignore. At the end of the week, Isaiah asked for one thing: a ride to the Vietnam Veterans Memorial. He stood in front of that black granite wall, silent, his fingers tracing names he hadn't spoken in years. Then he pulled something from around his neck. The medal. He placed it gently against the wall, whispered something only the stone could hear, and turned to Grant. It's not the medal they need to see. It's the man who wore it. Isaiah sat by his hospital window, watching the sunset burn orange through the Atlanta haze. He was tired, not just from cracked ribs or bruised pride, but from the weight of memory. Some scars don't ache until the noise fades. And now, with the headlines dying down and the interviews politely declined, the silence was creeping back in. That's when the letter arrived. No return address. No postage. Just slid under his door in a white envelope, handwritten in thick, blocky ink. You think a medal makes you matter? Inside, a single bullet casing. The police were notified immediately. Grant insisted on private security. Reese, the head of Whitmore Tower Security, moved Isaiah to a private suite on the top floor of a different building, unmarked, unlisted. But Isaiah didn't flinch. He'd lived through napalm, through Jim Crow, through Reaganomics and rooftop snipers and the war on drugs that felt more like a war on him. A bullet casing wasn't new. It was just proof that truth still made people nervous. Let them be nervous, Isaiah muttered. But the threat opened floodgates. Soon came the messages online, the calls, the whispers. Some praised him. Others, mostly anonymous, called him a fraud. Where's the DD-214? Probably got that medal from eBay. Another race-baiting janitor looking for a payday. Isaiah didn't respond, but it chipped away at something inside him. It reminded him of 1971, when he applied for a job at City Hall and the white interviewer laughed at his resume. I don't hire busboys who think a war story makes them managers. He hadn't thought about that in decades. But now the voice echoed again, this time wearing Twitter handles and comment threads. Grant tried to intervene. He organized a town hall, invited veterans, leaders, faith groups. He asked Isaiah to speak. Say whatever you want, Grant said. No cameras, just people. Isaiah hesitated, then agreed. But the night of the event, when he stood before the crowd of 200 people in the local Baptist church, he didn't read the speech Grant's PR team had drafted. He folded the paper and placed it on the lectern. Then he said, a man once told me I wasn't worth protecting because I carried a mop instead of a briefcase. But let me tell you something. Mops don't erase dignity. They just catch the mess you leave behind. The room was silent. I fought in a war that wasn't mine. I bled in a jungle I never knew existed. And I came home to a country that never wanted to remember me until I got beat in front of a camera. If that's what it takes to be heard, then this place ain't free. It's just loud. Applause broke like thunder. Some stood, some cried. And Grant, he just stared, like he was seeing Isaiah for the first time. After the event, a young woman approached Isaiah. Her name was Danielle Rivers, a black journalist with a podcast called Ghosts of America. She didn't want an interview. She wanted to investigate. I think the 2 officers who attacked you aren't just a one-time thing. I've been tracking complaints, reports, suppressed footage. I think this is systemic. Isaiah looked her in the eye. You think, or you know? Danielle smiled. I'm ready to prove it. Isaiah nodded. Then let's stop mopping up blood and start exposing the hands that spilled it. By morning, Danielle's podcast trailer dropped. Episode 1, The Man They Tried to Silence. Within hours, it had 200,000 downloads. By evening, 1.2 million. And on forums across the country, one question surged. How many Isaiahs are there? But while the public was learning, The Atlanta Police Union was watching, and they didn't like what they saw. One officer, in a closed-door meeting, said, "If that janitor wants war, he's about to learn how we fight." The newsroom at Ghosts of America was barely more than a co-working space in the back of a downtown library. Worn desks, a squeaky fan, and walls plastered with sticky notes and red string. But Danielle Rivers worked like she was at the New York Times. She had 3 interns, 2 old laptops, and 1 rule: truth over comfort. Every time. And now, she was diving headfirst into the most volatile story of her career. The podcast's second episode dropped 3 days after the first. Episode 2, The Complaints They Buried. It began with a name: Officer Kyle Mercer, one of the 2 cops who attacked Isaiah. The episode detailed 4 prior complaints for excessive force, all dismissed. Body cam footage lost in internal review. A 2017 case where he broke a teen's collarbone during a traffic stop. No charges. Danielle had receipts. And Isaiah's story gave it all a face. The episode ended with Danielle's voice. When a man wears a uniform and a gun, but can't tell the difference between a janitor and a threat, it's not just racism. It's negligence wrapped in a badge. The fallout was immediate. The Atlanta PD issued a statement denying systemic issues. A union spokesperson called Danielle an online agitator with no respect for law enforcement. But the public wasn't buying it. Veterans groups rallied behind Isaiah. Civil rights leaders held a march. And on the streets of Atlanta, posters appeared overnight. Believe Isaiah. His bronze star. His wounded face. His voice beneath it all. Grant Whitmore watched it unfold like a man caught between 2 worlds. At board meetings, his partners fidgeted. "This isn't good for business," one muttered. "He's not suing us," another said. Yet. But Grant wasn't thinking about lawsuits. He was thinking about something deeper. Legacy. His father built Whitmore and Lane on vision and valor. That's what the plaque said in the tower's lobby. But what kind of valor watches its janitor get beaten and only acts after a camera catches it? Late one evening, Grant drove to the west side of the city. No security. No driver. Just him, a navy sweater, and a name written on a scrap of paper. Charlene Taylor. A former employee who'd quit without notice in 2019. Danielle's episode mentioned her, a witness to one of Mercer's earliest misconducts. She answered the door with suspicion in her eyes. "You're the billionaire, huh?" "Grant. Just Grant tonight." "Why are you here?" "Because Danielle said you saw what Mercer did in 2016. And no one believed you." She nodded, slowly. "They told me I imagined it. Then they told me I was unstable." "I'm sorry. You're 4 years late." Grant didn't argue. Instead, he pulled out a recorder. "Can I hear your story?" Charlene stared at him. Then opened the door wider. "You can do better than hear it. You can help tell it." Back in the hospital, Isaiah listened to the second podcast episode on a pair of donated earbuds. He didn't flinch at the audio clips of Mercer laughing. He didn't react to the stats or the testimonies. But when Danielle played a voicemail at the end, his own, left on her burner phone, his eyes misted over. "This is Isaiah. I just want to say, you ain't just telling my story. You telling a nation what it feels like to disappear. Keep going, baby girl. Keep going." Meanwhile, Officer Mercer was placed on administrative leave. Translation: paid vacation. And the whispers inside the precinct grew colder. Some officers felt betrayed. Others grew paranoid. And someone, no one knew who, posted Isaiah's hospital location on a law enforcement forum. At 2:17 a.m., the fire alarm in Isaiah's building went off. His security detail rushed him down a side stairwell. It wasn't smoke that followed. It was footsteps. Quick. Purposeful. Someone was in the stairwell who didn't belong. And when the door slammed behind them, Isaiah turned, face calm, and said, "If they came to finish what they started." He reached into his coat pocket and held up the one thing they didn't expect. A second medal. Silver Star. Undocumented. Unrecognized. Awarded unofficially after a covert rescue op in 1970. He never wore it. Until now. They better know who they're coming for. By dawn, the stairwell incident had been classified as an unverified intrusion. No injuries. No suspect. No trace. But Isaiah knew. That wasn't an accident. It was a message. And this time, they didn't even bother hiding the threat. Grant paced in his high-rise office, staring at the city below like it was foreign territory. The news cycle had only intensified overnight. Hashtag Justice for Isaiah was trending worldwide. Anonymous accounts were posting badge numbers, old disciplinary records, even addresses. The system was cracking, not because it wanted to, but because someone had hit it where it bled. Visibility. Danielle wasn't sleeping. She and her team had uncovered something bigger. A pattern. 18 complaints against Officer Mercer's precinct in the last 6 years. 9 involved elderly black men. Only 1 had ever been investigated. And in every case, the official phrase repeated like a hymn. Insufficient evidence to proceed. She wasn't a journalist anymore. She was a chronicler of the ignored. But not everyone wanted the truth told. Danielle's car was vandalized outside her apartment. Her editor got an anonymous email with her social security number attached. And one night, while reviewing body cam data in her studio, the power flickered off. Then came the knock. Soft, slow, measured. She didn't open the door. She called Isaiah. Isaiah arrived 40 minutes later with Grant in tow. He stepped into the studio, looked around, then turned to Danielle. They scared. She nodded. Of you? Of what you're proving? Danielle turned the laptop screen. A paused frame showed Officer Mercer smirking in a 2018 interrogation room. Transcript underneath. He's just some old janitor. Don't even know why he's talking. Isaiah stared at the screen. Then let's make him remember. That weekend, a press conference was announced. Danielle, Isaiah, Grant, 3 people from different corners of the American story, now standing shoulder to shoulder. The auditorium buzzed with reporters, activists, veterans, law students, and more. Isaiah stepped up first. No speech, just a photo. It was a picture of Earl Simmons, a fellow Vietnam vet and janitor, beaten to death in 1996. No charges, no trial. He's the one y'all never saw. Then he held up the bullet casing he'd received in the letter. And this, he said, this ain't fear. This is proof I made someone nervous enough to send it. Which means we're getting close. Then Danielle stepped up. She pulled up slide after slide. Dates, testimonies, officer misconduct files buried in red tape. This isn't about one man being attacked. This is about a system that labels dignity as threat and silence as compliance. The room erupted, and then Grant stepped forward. He said nothing at first, just removed the plaque from the wall behind him, the one that read honor, vision, legacy. I thought I knew what legacy meant, he said. But Isaiah Thompson has taught me more about courage than any boardroom ever has. He turned to Isaiah. So starting today, this building bears a new name. The Isaiah J. Thompson Center for Truth and Accountability. Silence. Then thunderous applause. Not for Grant, not for Danielle, but for Isaiah, who stood still, nodding slightly, as if to say, it's not for me. It's for everyone who never got the mic. But across town, in a locked precinct office, a burner phone buzzed. A voice answered. It's happening faster than we thought. Pause. No, not yet. Let them think they're winning. Click. Silence. Then the faint sound of a locker opening. And inside, a duffel bag, an old badge, and a file labeled Isaiah J. Thompson, classified. Isaiah hadn't worn his dog tags in over 30 years. They sat inside a velvet pouch, tucked away in an old cigar box that still smelled of Georgia pine and diesel oil, remnants of a war fought in someone else's jungle for someone else's freedom. But tonight, he took them out. The cold steel kissed his palm like an old friend. Because something was coming. And this time, he wouldn't just survive it. He'd name it. Across the city, Danielle stared at a file folder Grant had handed her earlier that day. It wasn't police paperwork. It was military, stamped across the top in faded red ink. Classified, for internal use only. The folder contained a briefing. Dated July 11th, 1970. Location, Laos border. Operative, I.J. Thompson. Objective, rescue of POWs during Operation Tailwind. Isaiah had never spoken of this mission, not even to his mother. Inside were photos, grainy, black and white, showing Isaiah dragging an injured soldier through smoke, cradling a bleeding child, holding a rifle in one hand and an American flag in the other. One photo was captioned, Hostile territory, target neutralized, civilian protected. Danielle swallowed. He wasn't just a soldier. He was a ghost. The truth began to reshape Isaiah in the public eye. Not just a janitor, not just a veteran, but a man who had carried the soul of a broken country on his back and never asked for applause. And yet, The deeper Danielle dug, the more the files disappeared. Links went dead. FOIA requests returned blank pages. The Pentagon issued a rare statement. We can neither confirm nor deny the existence of any missions involving Isaiah Thompson. Danielle wasn't shocked. They never liked records of the people they used and forgot. Meanwhile, Isaiah sat with Grant one night in the Isaiah J. Thompson Center lobby. The billionaire looked smaller than usual, less polished. You never told anyone, Grant said. Didn't need to. But you saved lives. Changed history. Isaiah looked up. Didn't change mine. Came home. Got called boy. Got denied loans. Got told to sweep floors. That mission didn't follow me here. He paused. But the silence did. At the same time, Danielle received a tip from an anonymous source. A USB drive left in her mailbox. No note. Just a sticker on the drive that read, "Whisper." She opened it. Inside were 2 video files. One showed Officer Mercer in 2019, laughing with other officers in a bar, mocking a disabled veteran who'd filed a complaint. But it was the second file that froze her. A grainy, military cam video. A younger Isaiah, dragging a soldier through the jungle. A voice over radio crackled. "Thompson, do you copy? We're pinned. Evac in 5 minutes." Then silence. Then Isaiah's voice. "They don't leave till the kid's safe." The screen went black. Danielle didn't sleep. She posted a teaser clip. It exploded online. Veterans groups issued statements demanding the government acknowledge Isaiah's covert missions. Documentarians called. Netflix offered deals. Isaiah declined all of it. Not interested in being famous. I'm interested in being heard. Then came the subpoena. From the Office of Special Investigations. Isaiah was being summoned, not for an award, not for testimony, but for potential breach of national security. The story was too loud, too raw. And the government? It doesn't like old ghosts with working microphones. Grant tried to intervene. He hired legal counsel, called in favors from senators. But Isaiah stood firm. Let them come. I've been quiet for 50 years. If they want silence, they'll have to take it from my lips, not my soul. And so, on a rainy Tuesday morning, Isaiah walked up the marble steps of a federal courthouse, cane in one hand, medal on his chest. The cameras didn't stop flashing. Neither did his eyes. Because he wasn't walking in alone. Behind him came Danielle. Behind her, dozens of janitors. Veterans. Nurses. Teachers. Mothers. Each carried something symbolic. A mop. A folder. A photo. A broken cane. And above the crowd, one sign rose higher than the rest. We remember what you tried to erase. The federal courthouse had never seen a morning like this. Not for a trial. Not for a president. Not for a fallen officer or a corporate scandal. This was something else. A reckoning wrapped in pressed uniforms and silent stares. Inside courtroom 4B, the mood was taut. The Department of Defense had sent 2 lawyers. Clean-cut. Stern. No visible rank. They didn't introduce themselves. They didn't have to. Isaiah sat at the front, hands folded on the table, his cane resting beside the chair. Across the aisle, Danielle, Grant, and Isaiah's new attorney, Lenora Bishop, a black woman who once clerked for the Supreme Court, flanked him like guardians of history. And on the bench, the presiding figure, Judge Samuel E. Price, white, 69, known for rulings that walked the line between cautious and callous. But even he looked uncomfortable this morning. "Mr. Thompson," the lead government attorney began, "you've been summoned here not because of any accusation." "Then why am I here?" Isaiah interrupted. A beat. The room stiffened. The attorney cleared his throat. "There are national security concerns regarding information that may have been shared through a podcast currently streaming globally." "You mean the truth?" Isaiah said, deadpan. "We mean operational history that was never intended for civilian dissemination." Lenora stood. "Your Honor, Mr. Thompson never signed any non-disclosure related to that mission. Because, officially, it never existed." "Which is precisely our point," the attorney countered. "This could open the floodgates." "To what?" Danielle said aloud, before checking herself. "To accountability?" Judge Price raised a hand. "This is not a criminal trial," he said. "But, Mr. Thompson, the court must ask, did you knowingly disclose classified information to the public?" Isaiah leaned forward. "Didn't share coordinates. Didn't mention allies. Didn't give names." He held up the photo of him carrying a child. "I shared this because the people who gave me that mission came home and forgot me. I was supposed to disappear into a broom closet. Sweep. Shut up. And die. But I didn't. Murmurs in the gallery. Judge Price tapped his gavel once. Mr. Thompson. No, Your Honor, Isaiah said. You asked me a question. Let me finish. He stood. Slowly. Everyone in the courtroom watched. You know how many of us went over there? Died for a country that spit us out the second we stepped off that plane. You want to talk about secrets? The real secret is how many men you broke, then buried in jobs we were told we were lucky to get. I ain't ashamed of what I did. I'm ashamed it took a beating caught on camera for anyone to give a damn. Dead silence. Even the DOD lawyers didn't interrupt. Then, from the back of the room, someone stood. An older white man, dressed in civilian clothes. Eyes sharp. He raised a hand. Your Honor, may I? Everyone turned. Judge Price squinted. Identify yourself. Colonel Richard Neeson, retired. The courtroom buzzed. I was Isaiah's commanding officer during Operation Tailwind. Even Isaiah's head snapped. Rich? Neeson nodded. Yes, sir. He turned to the judge. I came here today because I watched what they did to him, and because I was ordered never to speak of that mission. But I've buried too many men to keep quiet one more damn time. Judge Price motioned for silence, but Neeson continued. Isaiah didn't just serve. He saved 7 lives in that jungle. He was never awarded the Silver Star officially because the op was buried, not because he didn't earn it. And the only reason he's not in Arlington is because he carried everyone else on his back. Danielle's jaw dropped. Grant looked like he'd been gut-punched by the truth. And Isaiah? He slowly sat back down, trembling, not from fear, but from the sudden weight of being seen. Outside, protesters filled the courthouse steps. Signs, drums, songs from the civil rights movement mixed with chants from Gen Z. Hashtag Justice for Isaiah. Hashtag Declassify the Truth. Hashtag Janitor with a star. Inside, Judge Price finally spoke. Mr. Thompson, the court finds no grounds for punitive action, but I suspect the world outside this courtroom still owes you something. Isaiah smiled softly. Let them pay it forward. The gavel fell, and history bent, just slightly. That evening, as the sun set over Atlanta, Isaiah stood on the courthouse steps, surrounded by strangers chanting his name. He looked to Danielle, to Grant, to Lenora, then to the sky. He didn't wave. He didn't raise a fist. He just whispered, "Y'all hear me now?" And the wind answered, "Yes." By the next morning, the Department of Defense had already issued its official statement. While details regarding Mr. Thompson's prior missions remain classified, the department respects his service and considers the matter closed. But across America, no one considered it closed. Because Isaiah Thompson had done what few ever could. He cracked the wall of silence that kept the forgotten invisible. And what poured through that crack was power. Danielle's podcast exploded past 10 million downloads. The episode titled The Trial That Wasn't became a cultural flashpoint, quoted in op-eds, classroom debates, even late-night monologues. It included not just audio from the courtroom, but hidden stories sent in by thousands of Black veterans, janitors, nurses, cafeteria workers, all recounting the same theme. We served. We suffered. We were silenced. One message from a former Marine said, I mopped blood off hospital floors for 30 years and never told anyone I was at Fallujah. No one asked. Meanwhile, the Atlanta Police Department was on edge. Officer Mercer had been reassigned, but leaked internal emails showed he was still on full pay, still carrying a badge, and still calling Isaiah a fake hero in group chats with other officers. Danielle got the screenshots. She didn't release them immediately. She waited, because she was working on something bigger. Grant Whitmore made headlines again, this time not for speeches or buildings. He pulled $12 million from the Whitmore and Lane Discretionary Fund, used it to create the Isaiah Initiative, a scholarship and legal defense trust for low-income workers facing workplace injustice. Dignity should not depend on a uniform or a tax bracket, Grant said at the press launch. Critics called it performative. Isaiah didn't. He was there, standing next to Grant, his cane replaced with a custom-engraved walking stick, gifted to him by a fellow veteran who had once swept floors in a Louisiana courthouse. The stick read, "We stand taller when we bend to lift others." But the fight was far from over. That week, Danielle received a secure envelope from an unnamed postal drop in Baltimore. Inside, a full, unredacted dossier. Title, Atlanta PD, Internal Conduct Investigations, 2010 to 2020. The file was damning. 43 sustained complaints. 16 officers with repeated use of force violations. 3 supervisors caught falsifying reports. And at the center of it all, Mercer. Danielle brought the file straight to attorney Lenora Bishop, who filed for a federal review of systemic abuse within the Atlanta Police Department. The lawsuit would be historic. But with history comes pushback. Within days, the threats returned. Someone left a dead bird in Danielle's mailbox. Someone keyed "traitor" into Grant's car. And one night, Isaiah received a letter that simply read, "Keep digging, and we'll bury the rest of you too." He lit it on fire, watched it turn to ash, then picked up the phone and called Danielle. "You still ready?" "Always." "Then let's turn this spark into a blaze." And blaze it did. Civil rights attorneys, advocacy groups, and retired judges signed on to the lawsuit. The DOJ launched an independent inquiry. News anchors began calling Isaiah the man who shook the system. But Isaiah didn't care for the titles. One morning, he returned to Whitmore Tower to mop the marble lobby. Not because he had to, because he wanted to. A young janitor walked up to him, barely 20, nervous, black hoodie and headphones hanging around his neck. "Mr. Thompson? Call me Isaiah. I just want to say, I didn't know people like us could do what you did." Isaiah smiled. "You ever clean blood off a floor before?" No." "Then let's keep it that way. But if you ever have to, make damn sure the world sees it." That night, Danielle posted a photo of Isaiah standing in the lobby with that janitor. Captioned, "The revolution doesn't always shout. Sometimes it sweeps quietly until the floor shines with truth." Back at the precinct, Mercer stared at his phone, jaw tight. He opened his locker. Inside, a photo of him in uniform, smiling. He ripped it in half. Because he knew. His days behind the badge were numbered. 3 weeks later, the Atlanta skyline shimmered like gold under the early morning haze. But inside Danielle's studio, the air was thick with tension. She had just received a voicemail from a blocked number. A man's voice. Gravelly. Southern drawl smoothed by years of secrecy. "I knew Isaiah once. Long time ago. In country. I got something he needs to see. I'm in Atlanta. Don't bring the media." Danielle played it twice. Then once more. Then called Isaiah. He listened in silence. When the message ended, he whispered, almost to himself. "Didn't think he was still alive." "You know him?" Danielle asked. "Not anymore. But I did. Back when we were ghosts." The meeting was set for 7 p.m. at a cafe tucked beneath the West Side overpass. No cameras. No entourage. Just Isaiah and Danielle. At 6:58, a tall, wiry man with snow-white hair and a limp walked in. He wore a faded denim jacket and aviators. Isaiah stood. "You son of a," he said, half anger, half relief. "Easy, Zay," the man replied. "I come in peace." His name was Colton Briggs. Ex-Special Forces. Isaiah's field partner during covert operations in Southeast Asia. Officially declared MIA in 1974. But clearly he'd just gone deep. "You dropped off the earth," Isaiah said. "Had to. The mission didn't end when the war did." Briggs pulled a leather pouch from inside his jacket and laid it on the table. Inside, a microfilm reel, a photograph, a government clearance badge marked Black Site, Albatross. Danielle leaned forward. "What is this?" Briggs looked at her, then at Isaiah. "Proof that your beating wasn't just racism. It was retaliation." The photo showed 3 men in fatigues, Isaiah, Briggs, and a third man, now confirmed to be Colonel Carl Mason. Isaiah paled. "He's the one who briefed us for Laos." "And now," Briggs said, "he's a contractor for Centurion Strategic Group." Danielle's eyes widened. Centurion had been in the news, an elite, private intelligence firm supplying training and gear to police departments nationwide, including Atlanta PD. So Mercer? He wasn't just some rogue cop. He was trained by Centurion. Mason made sure of it. "Why?" Briggs exhaled. "Because you know too much. You saw something in Laos you weren't supposed to. They wanted you erased. Discredited. Buried under the image of just another angry janitor." Isaiah clenched his jaw. "And the medal on my neck ruined the plan." Briggs nodded. "That medal made you visible." Danielle sat back, stunned. "So this goes beyond police brutality." "Way beyond," Briggs said. "This is a black budget cleanup operation. You're not just inconvenient, Isaiah. You're dangerous." The next day, Danielle and Lenora quietly filed for a congressional hearing. Isaiah would testify, not just as a victim of abuse, but as a whistleblower against a shadow network tied to federal defense contracts and civilian enforcement. Grant, once again, offered his platform. We'll live-stream the hearing. Full transparency. You sure? Isaiah asked. I was complicit in silence before, Grant said. Not again. The week before the hearing, someone firebombed Danielle's studio. No injuries. But every file, every note, every backup drive, gone. Except one. Briggs had uploaded the reel's contents to a secure cloud server under military encryption. Danielle posted a single image online that night. Isaiah in the jungle, holding a child. Behind him, smoke. Caption: You tried to erase him. We digitized him instead. It went viral. And that night, on a quiet street in Buckhead, Officer Mercer stepped into a waiting SUV. Inside was Colonel Carl Mason. It's spiraling, Mercer muttered. Then contain it. How? Do what we trained you for. Mercer's hand trembled. He's a national hero now. Mason leaned in, eyes cold. Heroes die. Stories change. Meanwhile, Isaiah sat alone in his small apartment, staring at a photo of him and Briggs from 1971. He touched the corner, then whispered, Y'all don't get to write my ending. And for the first time in decades, he felt something stir in his bones. Not anger, not fear, readiness. The day of the hearing arrived like a storm front. Hot air, gray skies, and the sense that the city was holding its breath. Isaiah stood in front of the Capitol steps in D.C., wearing his only suit, worn at the cuffs, pressed by hand, metal on his chest. Behind him, cameras. In front of him, Congress. To his left, Danielle. To his right, Lenora. And somewhere in the crowd, Colton Briggs, leaning on a cane of his own, eyes scanning for shadows. Because this wasn't just testimony. It was a battle. And Isaiah knew better than most. Battles rarely end when the noise stops. Inside the packed chamber, the opening remarks were standard. We are gathered today to address allegations of systemic abuse, covert military entanglements, and potential crimes committed under the veil of national security. But nothing about Isaiah Thompson had ever been standard. He stepped up to the microphone, didn't read from notes, didn't blink. His voice was steady, low, southern, a hammer wrapped in velvet. I served this country with hands that built bases and boots that bled in dirt I couldn't spell. They called me a hero once, quietly, in private rooms with no witnesses. Then they tried to erase me, publicly, but I ain't going nowhere. He told them everything. The jungle, the kid, the officer he dragged to safety, the orders that came without paperwork, the medals never pinned in daylight. Then he spoke of Mercer. He didn't just beat a janitor. He carried out a hit disguised as a routine check. Gasps, murmurs. And the man behind him, his training officer? Colonel Carl Mason. The chamber burst into uproar. The chairman slammed the gavel. Mr. Thompson, do you have proof? Danielle stood, handing over a USB. All of it's here. Video, contracts, internal memos, backed up across 6 servers. The chairman raised his brows. And who secured this? A voice rang from the gallery. I did. Colton Briggs stepped forward. And if you'll permit me, I'll testify under oath. Briggs's testimony turned the hearing into history. He outlined the Albatross Protocol, a black ops doctrine used to silence field operatives when their memory became legally inconvenient. Mason, according to Briggs, wasn't just a contractor. He was the architect. Centurion wasn't rogue. It was strategic deniability in a suit. Then came the video, the one Danielle had been saving. It showed Mercer, 2 years prior, in a Centurion training simulation, where trainees practiced neutralizing high-risk civilians based on behavioral threat assessments. One of the targets? A black man in janitor's uniform, identical to Isaiah's. Silence. Then thunder. The room exploded in outrage. Reporters rushed to post. Senators demanded recess. Protesters outside screamed so loud the walls vibrated. And yet, Isaiah stood still. Because he knew. This wasn't victory. Not yet. That night, back at the hotel, Danielle noticed something odd. Her laptop, brand new, encrypted, had been accessed remotely. The file tree had changed. The original Centurion documents? Gone. Replaced by a blank folder labeled, "Thank you for your service." Her hands shook. She called Isaiah. No answer. She tried again. Voicemail. An hour later, Isaiah's neighbor called Danielle. He left his place around 8:30. Said he was going for a walk. Never came back. She froze. Grant, already in town, ordered private security. Danielle contacted the authorities. But she didn't wait. She called the only man who might know where to start. Briggs. He's gone. How long? Over an hour. Then we don't have much time. Meanwhile, inside a nondescript van parked outside the city limits, Isaiah sat, wrists zip-tied, bruised lip bleeding. Across from him, Colonel Carl Mason, still in his crisp coat, still wearing that half-smile. You could have lived out your days quietly, Thompson. Sweeping floors. Watching the world forget you. Isaiah grunted. You really thought that was living? Mason leaned forward. You think people will care about your war stories once you're gone? You'll be a news cycle. Nothing more. Isaiah stared him down. Maybe. But while I'm breathing, you're going to remember my name. Mason chuckled. We'll see. He signaled the driver. The van turned off-road, heading into a wooded clearing. Isaiah clenched his fists. Back in the city, Briggs loaded a pistol. They've taken him. I know where they're headed. Danielle swallowed hard. You going after them alone? No, Briggs said. You're coming too. I'm not trained. You've been trained by life. And right now we need eyes, ears, and someone who still has hope. By the time they reached the tree line where Centurion once held training camps, the sun had dipped low. And somewhere inside those trees, Isaiah was preparing to remind the devil what survival looks like. The trees of Pine Ridge whispered as the wind slid through them, but no one was listening. Not Mason, not his hired men, and certainly not Isaiah Thompson, whose wrists were zip-tied behind a rotting wooden chair in the center of a moss-covered clearing once used as a Centurion training camp. The bonfire crackled nearby. A cruel irony. Fire, the very element used to cleanse, now prepared to bury. Mason circled Isaiah like a man admiring a statue he planned to destroy. The truth is heavy, Thompson, he said. Not everyone survives it. Isaiah didn't respond. His eyes were closed. His lips whispered something quietly. A prayer? A plan? Or perhaps a memory of Laos, where the air had once felt just as thick, right before everything went to hell. Back on the dirt road, Danielle, Colton Briggs, and two of Grant's private security officers in civilian gear moved on foot. Briggs had insisted they ditch the car. If I know Mason, he's got motion sensors out the wazoo. They'll see us before we see them. Then how do we get to Isaiah? Danielle asked. Briggs tapped his head. We ghost it, just like the jungle. He handed her a small device, a jammer. This'll buy us 10 minutes of blind. After that, were shadows and firelight. Inside the clearing, Mason poured kerosene into a rusted tin pan. The fumes bit Isaiah's nose. You won't feel a thing, Mason said, smiling. Just a quiet fade into irrelevance. Isaiah lifted his head slowly and smiled back. That's funny, because I feel more alive than I have in decades. Mason's smirk faltered. You really think someone's coming to save you? Oh, I don't think. I know. 10 feet beyond the clearing's edge, Danielle and Briggs crouched beneath a fallen pine. The signal jammer buzzed in her pocket. 3 minutes, she whispered. Briggs nodded, lifting his pistol. You take the left. I'll grab the spotlight. I've never. You've listened, haven't you? That's more than most ever do. Danielle took a breath. Nodded. They moved. Mason turned back toward Isaiah. Final words. Isaiah looked into the flames. Yeah, you should have checked my neck. Mason frowned, confused, then froze as the metal around Isaiah's throat glinted gold under the firelight. That's when he heard it. Snap. A twig. Then, pop. The spotlight shattered. Crack. Briggs dropped the first guard with a shot to the leg. Danielle launched herself through the brush, tackling the second. Chaos. Shouting. Flashlight beams cutting through smoke. And Isaiah? Isaiah stood, zip ties sliced clean by the sharpened edge of his metal. Mason reached for his sidearm, but Isaiah was already on him. Fists flying. 50 years of fury uncoiling like thunder. You beat me with the badge. Punch. Tried to erase me with fire. Punch. But I am. Still. Here. Crack. Mason crumpled. The guards fled into the woods. Briggs limped over, gun still raised. Danielle ran to Isaiah, breathless. Are you okay? Isaiah wiped his bloody lip. I've been worse. He picked up the photo Mason had dropped, him and Briggs from decades ago. Guess ghosts really do walk. An hour later, law enforcement arrived. Not just local cops, federal marshals, tipped off by Lenora through back channels. Mason was taken into custody. So were his men. But the Real story broke before the booking. Danielle went live from her phone, disheveled, dirt-streaked, mascara running. This is Danielle Pierce reporting from Pine Ridge. They tried to silence Isaiah Thompson again. But this time, the forest heard him. And so will the world. By morning, the headlines were global. Attempted assassination of war hero foiled. Shadow contractor exposed in attack on veteran. From janitor to justice, Isaiah Thompson survives again. Isaiah stood on his porch that night, overlooking the quiet street in Atlanta. Briggs leaned beside him. You ever think we'd make it this far? Isaiah smirked. Hell no. They both laughed. For a while, nothing needed to be said. Until Isaiah turned to Danielle, who stood behind them with her notebook. Ready for the next chapter? He asked. She flipped the page. Born ready. Because the fight wasn't over. But they'd lit a fire so bright, even the deepest secrets couldn't hide anymore. And Isaiah Thompson was done being a ghost. 2 weeks after the ambush in Pine Ridge, Isaiah stood before a packed rotunda at the Pentagon. Not in shackles, not behind a mop, but in a tailored Navy suit with polished boots and a chest that bore only one piece of decoration. His combat medal. And soon, perhaps, another. A Marine Corps general approached the podium. His voice was solemn, clear. The Department of Defense does not take these matters lightly. But in light of new evidence, it is my honor to present this nation's highest military recognition. The audience stood as Isaiah was named. Medal of Honor nominee, Sergeant Isaiah David Thompson. Gasps. Applause. And yet, Isaiah didn't smile. Not yet. Backstage, he sat with Danielle, Lenora, and Briggs. He held the official letter in his hand. Read it again, and again, until he reached the final paragraph. This award is contingent upon Sergeant Thompson's agreement to limit further public disclosure regarding Operation Albatross and associated field operations. He closed the letter. They want my silence in exchange for their glory. Danielle frowned. Isaiah, you deserve this. But not at that cost. They want to turn me into a symbol, a statue, and statues don't talk, Briggs added. Isaiah leaned back. I didn't survive this long to be mounted in marble. The press conference was scheduled for the next morning. Military personnel, national press, a televised announcement to heal the wounds of the past. But that night, Isaiah didn't sleep. He walked the streets of D.C., passing monuments built to men who wore the same uniform, but never mopped floors after war. At sunrise, he returned to his hotel room, where Danielle was pacing. He handed her a flash drive. What is this? She asked. My truth. No edits. No clearance. You're sure? Play it the second they call my name. 10 a.m. sharp. The Pentagon stage was gleaming. Camera crews adjusted lenses. Flags lined the walls. The general stood center stage. Today, we acknowledge a forgotten chapter. Isaiah waited behind the curtain, expression blank. The general raised the medal. Isaiah Thompson, please join us. He stepped onto the stage. The applause was thunderous. He took the podium, looked at the cameras, then said, I decline. Dead silence. Even the microphones didn't know how to process it. He continued, I'm honored. I truly am. But if receiving this medal means I have to forget what was done in darkness, then I'll walk away a free man before I stand here as a muted one. You want to honor me? Don't just hang metal on my chest. Hang justice around the neck of the system that broke me. Danielle hit play. On every screen behind Isaiah, his pre-recorded video began. A confession, an expose, a name-by-name breakdown of Operation Albatross. The abandoned soldiers. The secret camps. The off-the-books missions. The war crimes no one ever owned. Inside the hall, some people stood and clapped. Others stormed out. One colonel wept. Isaiah simply turned and left the stage. Without the medal, but with his voice intact. The fallout was nuclear. By noon, a special counsel had been appointed. By dusk, 3 high-ranking officials in Centurion resigned. By midnight, #NotForSilence was trending worldwide. And Isaiah? Isaiah took the late train back to Atlanta. No interviews. No speeches. Just a quiet seat. A window. And a whisper. My story's mine again. He returned to his old neighborhood the next morning. Not to sweep floors, but to meet with 6 young veterans at the local rec center. Each one had served. Each one had been discarded, and each one now had a voice. Because of him, one of them asked, "Mr. Thompson, would you do it all over again?" He paused. "Only if I got to burn the lies down twice." That night, as the city slept, Danielle uploaded the full video to their new independent media site, The Janitor's Justice, with a mission to document every voice they tried to erase. Isaiah Thompson never wore the Medal of Honor, but the world now knew. His story was heavier than any medal. 2 months passed since Isaiah Thompson declined the Medal of Honor. In that time, Congress held emergency hearings, the Department of Defense purged over 40 internal memos, and Centurion Strategic Group filed for temporary restructuring, a corporate euphemism for imploding under federal investigation. But the man at the center of it all, Colonel Carl Mason, was sitting in a cold, windowless interrogation room in Quantico. And for the first time in his life, he wasn't smiling. FBI agents had spent weeks unraveling his accounts. Over $37 million in offshore transfers. Shell corporations across Dubai, Cyprus, and the Virgin Islands. Still, Mason wouldn't talk. Not until they brought in a name he didn't expect. Special Agent Reena Patel entered the room holding a folder labeled Athena-09, Tier 1 Operators, Eyes Only. She dropped it on the table. Mason flinched. "You're not cleared for that file," he muttered. Patel sat across from him, folding her arms. "Funny, because your old friend General Ellsworth says I am." Mason's eyes darkened. Patel leaned in. "See, we always thought you were the top of the tree. But turns out, you were just another root. So here's the deal. You talk. Now. Or we let the public connect the rest of the dots, and Centurion becomes the least of your worries." Back in Atlanta, Isaiah was fixing the fence outside his small home when Danielle's car screeched to a stop. She jumped out, phone in hand. "It's Mason," she said. He cracked. "What did he say?" She took a breath. "He named names. And one of them is Whitmore." Isaiah froze. "Grant. Not Grant. His father. Howard Whitmore. A name carved into marble downtown. Founder of Whitmore and Lane. Visionary. Patriot. And apparently, primary investor in Centurion's original seed fund. It had been buried under 5 layers of corporate rebranding, but Danielle and her team traced it back. In 1982, Howard Whitmore co-chaired a private think tank known as the Axis Initiative, a pseudo-intelligence board that designed containment protocols for domestic unrest after Vietnam. Centurion had been its weapon. Isaiah blinked. "That means Grant's fortune, his towers, everything. Built on a lie," Danielle whispered. Isaiah asked to meet Grant privately. No cameras. No press. Just 2 men. One truth. They met in the garden of Whitmore Tower. Ironically, beside a statue of Howard Whitmore holding a blueprint. Isaiah stood quietly as Grant approached. "I've been expecting this," Grant said. "You knew?" "Not fully. I always wondered why certain donations disappeared from our books. Why my father avoided questions about Centurion. Now I know." Isaiah held up a folder. "This is everything. And what do you want me to do with it?" Isaiah stared him down. "Tear it all down." The next day, Grant did something no billionaire ever had. He held a press conference at City Hall and renounced his family legacy. "My father helped build an empire on the backs of men like Isaiah Thompson. So from this day forward, every cent from the Whitmore Foundation will go to reparative justice funds, veterans' legal defense, and rebuilding communities we harmed. We don't erase the past by denying it. We confront it." The crowd erupted. Some praised him. Some called it PR damage control. But Isaiah? He said only this. A man's worth isn't in what he inherits. It's in what he's willing to burn to make things right. But something else was happening. Danielle's team had discovered that Athena-09, the secret program Howard co-chaired, had other branches. More domestic contractors. More buried missions. More ghosts. And just as they began to publish the documents online, her apartment was broken into. Nothing was stolen. Except one item. Isaiah's medal. Danielle received a message hours later. No number. Just a single line. "You opened the first door? Now let's see if you'll survive the second." She showed it to Isaiah. He didn't flinch. "Then we keep walking." Because this story was never about medals. Never about mop buckets or podiums. It was about what happens when the people you try to bury come back wearing armor made of truth. 2 days after the break-in, Isaiah stood before the burned-out remains of Danielle's apartment. He didn't say much. Didn't need to. The silence carried everything: the threat, the insult, and the challenge. They didn't just want to scare him. They wanted him quiet again, just like back then. But the problem was, he was louder now without even speaking. That same night, an anonymous package arrived at Grant Whitmore's downtown office. Inside it, a photograph, a Vietnam-era dog tag, and a torn piece of a military personnel file with the letters Athena-09, classified/redacted. There was no note, but there didn't need to be, because the photo showed Isaiah in uniform, standing next to someone long presumed dead, someone who should not exist. Danielle traced the dog tag back to a soldier named Julian Roque, officially listed as Kia in Cambodia, 1974. But Roque had never died. He'd gone underground. And if the rumors were true, he ran the remnants of Athena-09 to this day, under a code name. The Archivist. That night, Isaiah received a call from an untraceable number. A deep voice came through the static. "You were never supposed to remember. But since you do, let's make a deal." "What kind of deal?" "One that ends this for both of us." "I'm listening." "Come alone. To the place where it all started." "Laos." "No. Closer." "Where?" "Pine Ridge." The line went dead. Isaiah didn't tell Danielle. Didn't tell Grant. Or Briggs. This was his fight. He arrived at Pine Ridge by dawn. The woods were damp with dew. Moss hung like ghosts from the trees. At the center of the old clearing, a folding chair sat beneath a tarped canopy. And in it, Julian Roque. White beard. One glass eye. Skin like cracked leather. He looked like time itself had tried and failed to erase him. Isaiah stood before him. "You're real." Regretfully. "Why now?" Roque shrugged. "Because truth eventually makes its way home, even if it has to crawl through hell to get there. You ran Athena-09. I built it. Mason just made it mean." Isaiah stepped closer. "Why me?" "Because you disobeyed orders once and saved a life. That made you unpredictable. So you marked me? We tried. But you were stronger than expected." Roque reached into a satchel and tossed something onto the table. "Isaiah's missing metal. Here. No strings. What do you want in return?" Roque sighed. "Peace. You don't deserve it. Does anyone?" They sat in silence for what felt like hours. Then Roque said, "You can expose me, or you can bury me here. I've got no guards. No code words left. Just bones and secrets. You really think I came to kill you?" "No. I think you came to finish it. However you define that." Isaiah stood, held the metal, then looked Roque in the eye. "I'll leave you to history. But know this. Your story doesn't end with silence. It ends with me speaking." He walked away, metal in one hand, justice in the other. And as the wind moved through the trees, he felt something lift from his shoulders. A weight he'd carried since Southeast Asia. 2 weeks later, Isaiah returned to Washington. He delivered a speech, not in a courtroom or war memorial, but at a public school in Anacostia. 5th graders. Plastic chairs. No cameras. He told them everything. The war. The lies. The silence. And how he learned that dignity isn't something they can give you. It's something you take back, when you finally decide that enough is enough. Danielle recorded it on her phone. The video went viral not because of what he said, but because of what he didn't. He didn't ask for pity. He didn't ask for applause. He just told the truth. And sometimes, in a world built on secrets, truth is the loudest thing there is. The final scene? Isaiah sitting on his porch, sunlight warming his face. Briggs beside him, playing chess. A small boy rides by on a bike, shouting, "Hey, Mr. Janitor Man. My dad says you're a hero." Isaiah chuckles. "Your dad needs new heroes. Want a race?" "Nah, I'm too old." "Liar." The boy laughs and pedals away. Isaiah watches him disappear down the hill, then smiles. "Maybe I do need new heroes too."